Hello, everybody. This is Christy Whitman with the Quantum Success Show, where you can get your information and inspiration to create your desire. And as you can see, I have a friend with me. This is an amazing, amazing man. You are going to love this interview. I just love being in his presence. Grateful that I get to share time with him at TLC every couple times a year. So this amazing man is Dawson Church, Phd. He is an award-winning author whose best-selling book, The Genie In Your Genes, which is at yourgeniusgene.com, has been hailed by reviewers as a breakthrough in our understanding between the link between emotions and genetics, which is amazing. He's founded the National Institute for Intergrative Healthcare and to study and implement promising evidence-based psychological and medical techniques. His groundbreaking research has been published in prestigious scientific journals. He is the editor of Energy Psychology, Theory, Research, and Treatment, a peer-reviewed professional journal, and a blogger for Huffington Post. He shares how to apply the breakthroughs of energy psychology through health and athletic performances through EFT and EFT Universe, I should say, one of the largest alternative medicine sites on the web, which is EFTUniverse.com. So, oh my gosh, Dawson, I'm so excited that you're here with me.
And Christy, we all have a whole lot of fun doing all that. We do.
We really do. And I love your laugh. Anytime I get to hear your laugh, one of my favorite things at TLC is we have a lot of different laughs. And when you guys start laughing, I start laughing. So your laugh is contagious. So I am so excited to dig into your latest book that is coming, that is out, Mind to Matter, the astonishing science of how your brain creates material reality. Where did that idea for your latest book come?
I was a real skeptic about this whole idea of thoughts to things. And my wife, who I spend a lot of time with, but she has to drive a lot for her job as an art teacher. She drives around to different public schools and teaches art. And in the car, she listens to audiobooks, and a lot of them are by Abraham Hicks, and they talk about thoughts to things. And so I occasionally drive to an event, she'd have her CD in the car, and they were talking about thoughts to things. I would think to myself, that's such a nice, sweet, metaphysical idea. But here I am, a scientific researcher, and there's no real science behind that, surely. Wrong, 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 wrong. I began to look, Christy, at the science behind it. And first of all, I found a few studies. And so I was intrigued by these studies because they show that as our thoughts change, we have 6 basic brain waves, and they're in a ratio. So if you think about baking a cake or making a cocktail or making your favorite recipe, we have a habituated ratio of those 6 brain waves that our brains are putting out. What I found, though, as I began to dig into the studies behind this, was that when people are anxious or fearful or in negative emotional states or thinking negatively or believing negatively about the world, they have a very different cocktail of brain waves than if they are stable, calm, happy, peaceful, joyful. And so I found these brain waves changing. What I then found was that as brain waves change, they are then changing molecules in our body. When we're afraid, for example, just a simple example, if I'm thinking about a bad thing that happened to me, my cortisol level rises. How's it happening? It's because I'm having fear happening up here. It's sending a signal down to my adrenal medulla, which makes cortisol molecules. It's turning on the genes that code for cortisol, and I have a flood of cortisol. Mind to matter. But not just that one example. In the book, I review over 400 studies showing that our bodies are being affected all the time. Cancer cells, when we get fearful or anxious or afraid, and we have a spike in adrenaline and cortisol, those substances literally bind with receptors on cancer cells and feed them. They help cancer cells communicate and grow into and aggregate into tumors. They shut down enzymes that our body uses to identify and kill cancer cells. All those things happening purely on the basis of mental and emotional activities. I was blown away by not just 1 or 2 studies, a huge chain of evidence that our thoughts become things at the level of our bodies.
Amazing. Amazing. I think about my dad. I think it was about 11 years ago, he got cancer of the esophagus, which is a very rare cancer. And he always had an issue of speaking out, what was going on with him. And,
yes, right, yeah.
And when my sister, I don't know if you remember me telling a story, if you ever heard that, but my sister had committed suicide 20 years ago. And he just went into work and, just that's how he found his therapy. But every once in a while, he would just blow up and, have those moments. But he was just stuffing it all back. He had so much to say, and he couldn't talk to my mom about it. I was the only person that could even bring up the subject to him. And even then, it was like he had a hard time speaking about it. And I just found it fascinating as I look back from the metaphysical perspective that anywhere in his body, the only place he got it was in his esophagus, in his throat.
Right, yeah. And there are often links between our lived experience, our felt experience, our emotions, the events in our lives, and what goes on in our bodies. And the good news is that we are affecting our genes epigenetically by our emotions. In one study, a therapist worked with a group of people and gave them EFT tapping as well as radiotherapy, and she measured their gene expression before and after that 1 hour of therapy with EFT. 72 genes changed their expression between the beginning of the hour and the end of the hour compared to a control group. Absolutely amazing. Huge, 72 genes. Those genes had to do with the suppression of cancer tumors, including esophageal cancer. It was one of the genes that was upregulated, a gene that helps our body. They're called tumor necrosis factors, or TNFs. They help our bodies spot and kill cancer cells. And those genes were dialed up significantly by just 1 hour of tapping. So in the book, I talk about tapping, I talk about meditation, things that we can do to change this positively. And, we have a mutual friend, I won't mention her name because I don't know how public she'll be about this, but, she was diagnosed with breast cancer last year in June. And then also it had metastasized to lymph nodes under her arm, eventually metastasized to 3 spots on her lungs. And she didn't do any of the conventional therapies. Again, this is metastasized breast cancer, different parts of her body. She did energy therapies. She did energy healing. She did Qigong. She did EFT. She phoned me up. My wife was a surrogate for her. So we would tap together and meditate together, and we would say her name. Christine would say, I'm her, and my body is cancer-free. My doctors are astonished I'm going for my checkup now. There's no cancer whatsoever. About 3.5 months later, she went for a second series of tests. No traces of cancer in her body. Her lymph nodes cleared up. This fast-moving, aggressive tumor in her breast went into necrosis, again, what your body does. And that's the magic of thoughts to things. Change your energy, change your thoughts, change your beliefs, change your worldview, and your body responds. But I'll tell you something that's more outrageous. The whole second half of Mind to Matter, these studies when I began to read these studies, they blew my mind. There's research showing that as we change our worldview, beliefs, emotional state, it literally changes molecules, not just in our bodies, producing more or less serotonin or anandamide or DHEA or serotonin. It literally affects stuff out here in the real world. And the most intriguing studies are those of water molecules. And in one piece of research, they gave these healing touch practitioners beakers of water to hold. Now, water is composed, of course, everyone knows, but the most well-known, you may know the formula of no other element, but you know what the compound water is. It's H2O. It's because there's a big oxygen atom bonded to 2 little hydrogen atoms. But the angle of that bond between this big oxygen and these 2 little hydrogens is a known amount. It's 104.5 degrees, 104.5 degrees. That is always the bonding angle of H2O, except it isn't the bonding angle after those people have blessed it and held it. The bonding angle changes. When you then take that water and you pour it over plants and grow them, more of the seeds germinate, the seeds grow bigger, healthier, and taller than the other group. This is energy. So through our energy, we're changing these water molecules all around us, and our bodies are 70% water. So we're changing things like water. there are four fundamental forces of physics. And I won't go, I go pretty deep into them in the book, but I always just say that there's even research showing that intention. Now, again, this is not anybody just saying, oh, I want money. I want a beautiful marriage. I want a lovely house. This is a coherent person. This is a person who's meditating every day, who's tapping, who's reading positive books, who's listening to positive music.
They're doing inner work. They're not just wishing for it. And, but
yes.
they're aligning themselves.
Yeah. They're aligning. That's the crucial thing. They're aligning themselves with the universe, with a benevolent universe. When they intend, things happen. Things happen on the outer level. And those same intentions held by somebody not in alignment have no effect on the universe whatsoever, but get aligned. And so near the end of the book, there's this graph. And this graph is the heart coherence of a long-term meditator for 30 days. And so you see their heart coherence is going down here, up here, down, just this graph, very nice squiggle on the page, this graph of then, overlaid on top of that, there's a graph of the Earth's geomagnetic activity for that same 30 days. This is influenced by the solar wind. It's influenced by these big magnetic fields around the Earth that give us the north and south pole of the Earth. But these are things geologists study. They can study these things called field line resonances and Schumann frequencies that have to do with these huge global scales for 30 days. And what you see is the two graphs go like this. The heart coherence of that long-term meditator over 30 days mirrors the geomagnetic functioning of the planet we live on. So when you're in tune, not only are you in tune with all of nature, you're in tune with everyone else on the whole planet who's in tune with that universe. So some of the research in this book is, it's never been written about before. No one's ever highlighted most of the stuff before. It is us. That's why it's called the astonishing science of how our brains create material realities. It turns out that it just, I couldn't make this up. The science is so compelling.
Yeah, it's very leading edge, very leading edge. I love it. So what do you see as the future of Mind to Matter?
That's an intriguing question, Christy. And what I believe will happen is that in the book, I talk about your superpowers. And we have superpowers. I can sit here and by thought alone, I can create cascades of biochemical reactions in my body. I can create changes in my cells. I'm doing that just by mind, by thought. I'm creating changes in the water around me. I'm creating changes in the electromagnetic fields around me. All of these things are happening purely by means of thought. And so I think that we have these superpowers. We just haven't realized it yet. We think casually. And when we realize that we have these superpowers and start to think about these things consciously and live consciously, so we use our energy. Like before we did this interview, I sat for a few moments, I tuned into you, your wonderful energy, and also the energy of everyone watching. So we're using energy to connect and communicate in those ways. We will begin doing that on much larger scales. I think people who do this, who practice these things consciously, we know from research, have much lower burdens of disease, much longer lifespans. In one study, again, of the 400 I cover in the book, one study showed that optimists have about 8 years longer lifspan and are healthier in that 8 years than pessimists. So just your attitude, your belief is doing huge shifts in your body. And I think we're going to see people living much longer as they learn to harness their superpowers. I think they'll manifest. Now, again, manifesting isn't what you think it is. Manifesting is, use that word attunement, attuning to the universe. And the power of someone in attunement with the universe is amazing. The book isn't a whole bunch of dry scientific data. I have stories. I probably have over 100 stories there. I have over 150 illustrations in the book. I have tons of stories of people who applied this in their lives and literally saw synchronistic miracles happen. Just one of them. This guy said he was talking about how he got a cassette set back, and it was a cassette set that of a program by Wayne Dyer. And a friend of his, he loaned it to a friend. The friend gave it back, And all of the cassettes were rewound, very thoughtful of the friend, except for one, which wasn't rewound. And the guy thought, oh, my friend should have rewound that cassette. So he put that cassette in his player to rewind it, hit the play button, and Wayne Dyer was saying, now imagine if you just heard from your sister who died a while back. And the guy just burst into tears. He said, it was the second anniversary that day of my sister's death. I'm missing her so much on the anniversary of her death. And I felt so moved by that. He also, this guy who told the story, which is in the book, then also describes how he'd been donating money for a long time to a woman with some physical issues in a distant country, in the Philippines, and he'd been sending her money. She would write him back and say, thank you, I used the money to buy sneakers for my nephew, and I should describe how she'd used the money. And so he got an airmail letter from her that day, and in big block capitals, in the very, very top of the letter, it said, this is your everlasting sister, and I love you. And then the letter began. And the book is full of these outrageous synchronicities like that. I mean, it just gives me goosebumps thinking about them. So there are lots of stories about how to do this, and every chapter includes an extended play section at the end of each chapter saying how to apply this. Because I don't want people to just hear this and get inspired. I want them to hear this and do these things I'm saying. I want them to tap. I want them to meditate. I want them to read inspirational material. I want them to follow life paths that make them happy and express their potential, turn on these superpowers, and literally, I expect the whole world to change, as not only are we individually harnessing those superpowers, globally. I mean, things like, I read at the end of the book, I read about things like global warming, overpopulation, war, famine. I think as we as a species turn on our individual superpowers, we then are in sync with everyone else in the world who's turning on theirs, and we will find solutions even to these terrible global problems like poverty, malnutrition, lack of access to clean water, war, all of these things. I think we're in for a radical shift in the whole, I call the emosphere, the emotional sphere of the planet. And we will harness these abilities, and we will produce radical shifts in ourselves, our bodies, our nature, and everything else around us as we collaborate with nature on these solutions. So we're in for a very exciting century ahead of us.
I love your laugh. I love it. Well, I have to say, you are certainly a man that walks your talk, because as most of my probably viewers what I call my family, what they don't know about you is that you were in, your wife, Christine, who I absolutely love and adore, were in the Sonoma area, actually in Santa Rosa, when the fires in Napa, Sonoma, Santa Rosa started. And your perspective, first of all, you have to tell that story, so the short part of it, if you would. I'd love for you to. Sure. Because you were at the right place at the right time. You just were in the flow. And now even sitting here, that's why the first question I asked you, I'm like, where are you? Did you buy a house? Where are you staying? So would you give a short story of what happened with the fires and how you just brilliantly got out of it?
Yeah, well, I mean, that whole month, October of 2017, I was doing an intensive series of presentations scheduled to do them in different parts of the country, on the west coast of the USA in Vancouver. I was due to give an intensive training for therapists on psychological trauma, and then go to New York and train people there as well, and do it in several parts of the US. And so that night, my wife woke up first, and she woke me up and said, Dawson, something bad's happening. And so I glanced out the window, saw the glow of the fire on the hillside opposite our home. And we have a beautiful property which overlooks this beautiful, gorgeous valley, and then this neighboring hill. And I saw the glow of fire. And so I walked outside to see what was happening. And just between that first glance and then walking outside onto our deck and looking, the fire was cresting the ridgeline. And we later heard that the fire was traveling the length of a football field every 3 seconds. And I just said to her loudly, we are getting out of here right now. And I threw on some clothes, and like, your mind's making these little choices at the time. I mean, my mind was making these calculations. I have time for either socks or shoes, but not both. And so I grabbed shoes, no socks. And so I grabbed my car keys, I grabbed my laptop and my phone, and we sprinted for our car. We have a couple of acres, so a lot of property, and the car was in the very back of the property. So we got to the car, and as I got to the car, the fire reached the property, and there was this huge sheet of flame that just shot up behind the property. I had to do an entire therapy session on that flame. It was such an intense image. Now I'm saying it, I don't have any emotional reaction, but that, for months afterwards, I was just traumatized by that one image of this huge gout of flame that erupted, and it was right behind me. We have a separate building. We have like 8 buildings on the property, or had, and one of them is a beautiful office building which overlooked the valley as well, in a different part of the property. And so we jumped in the car, we tore out of there at high speed down our own driveway, and then out of the zone. My wife felt this heat on her head and looked up through the moonroof of the car, and all the branches were just aflame above us, just flames above us. And so we drove like crazy for a couple of miles, and then we drove to my ex-wife's house. My ex-wife was about 3 miles away from us. So we drove to her house, made sure everyone there and her neighborhood was awake. We woke people up, leaned on the horn, knocked on doors, just got everyone awake there, because the fire was, and then we just stood there next to the car, staring at a distant mountain as the fire would just advance. It would then lick around the house. The house would blow up. It was so loud. There were propane tanks exploding. There were the gas tanks of cars exploding. We then went a long way away, and eventually we couldn't get back to the property for a long time. And then I had to decide, okay, what do I do now? I'm due to leave in 3 days to train a whole bunch of therapists in psychological trauma, give a keynote speech at a conference. What do I do? Do I go, or do I stay here? And that was a very difficult choice to make. I felt I was abandoning my wife if I'd go, and our kids were all traumatized. They were like just clinging to us. Like, our kids are in their 20s and 30s, but they needed.
And they weren't living with you either, right?
No, they live in the Bay Area. They just needed to touch us and see us a lot at that time. And so I decided, what I do as a transformational speaker is I give keynote speeches. I train professionals in how to treat trauma. I'm going to go on that trip. And I did. I left a day late, but it was powerful to do that. Eventually, after about a week and a half, we were let back into the area, and my wife went there, and people took photographs, and it was just a wasteland. All the trees were burned. The house, the ash was maybe 3 or 4 inches thick, and the only thing left standing was the fireplace. Just this big fireplace was standing. All my other vehicles, everything was gone. Pets had all died. So it was just a really grim scene for a long time. But it's powerful, again, when you apply these techniques. You don't get traumatized. You don't carry this, I'm not telling you the story like somebody who's going to, like they call us fire victims. And I say to my wife, I'm not a victim of anything.
Yes. That's why I love you. That's awesome.
Yeah. So, it helped me get unstuck. We wanted to move for 2 or 3 years, and we then had to move.
The universe helped you move. Yeah, but then, and so the story, like you live in that realm, right? So I'm looking at you like, where are you? Did you buy a house? Because obviously I know what happened. And like your story of how you just found this wonderful house, it's like, you live in the land of the miraculous. Like I said, you really do. And that's what I love about you. I'm excited about this book so that more people can get into that vibrational frequency that you live in, Dawson, that I like to think I live in. And, so I think it's going to be really helpful for a lot of people. So, and those people that have that very analytical mind like yourself, that it's like, okay, well, it sounds all good and everything, but what's the science behind it? I think you're really going to help a lot of people that need to know what the science is behind it. So we're going to put a link to purchase your book, a link to Amazon right under the video. So you don't even have to go search for it. Just click the link below. It'll take you right there to I'm sorry, what was the book?
Mind to Matter.
Mind to Matter. Thank you.
Very intentionally, not mind over matter, because there's no sense in which our minds are kind of trying to make matter do stuff. It's just as our minds changes, effortlessly, matter does stuff.
And I love that. I'm glad I made a mistake on that, because we used to hear it's mind over matter, but it's not. Yes. Mind to matter.
Mind in harmony with matter, mind in harmony and aligned with the universe, and then matter just changing effortlessly. We don't have to sweat changing matter. In terms of disease, in terms of money, in terms of relationships, we change the energy of our lives, and energy is a potent force that then changes matter.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I wish you so much luck with your book launch, and I support you in any way, because this is incredible work. So I want to just recommend that everybody go below the video, click the link, purchase the book. I know you're going to be just completely astonished, as the book subtitle says. And please let me know what you're taking away. You know, I'm sure Dawson would happy to continue to have the conversation with you and I in the chat. So have a wonderful week, everybody. Dawson, thank you so much for being part of the show. I appreciate you. Any last words that you want to share?
Yeah, also, when you buy the book, you also get access to a Facebook group called Master Manifester, and we'll be having people share their stories of manifestation and miraculous change on that. And the thing I am most struck by, Christy, is that I just, so if I had a magic wand and could do one thing in the world, I'd wave a magic wand and have people love themselves, because the self-talk that people have is often so critical. We're trying to make ourselves change by coercion. We're trying to make ourselves be better people by saying, you know, you shouldn't do this, or you'll be accepted once you've lost 25 pounds, or after you get the perfect job, or when you're married, or when you're divorced, or when you live in the Bahamas or something. And we're always putting off that time of loving ourselves and making ourselves perfect to the future. And so the big message is, you know, just love yourself. Now, flood your mind with self-love. I'm not a perfect person. None of us are perfect people. And love yourself where you are and how you are. And what that's doing to your brain waves is it's shifting the whole way your brain functions, and it's sending all these juicy neurochemicals through your body. It's generating about 6 neurotransmitters, like anandamide, the bliss molecule, oxytocin, the bonding molecule. All these things change inside your brain and your body, and then you feel a lot better, and your cells love you for it. So just flooding yourself with peace and joy and self-love every day. You'll find there's a lot to laugh about. I want you to laugh with me regularly. So please, grab the book, but then practice what it says. Join that Master Manifester Facebook group. It's just going to be amazing to see what people share there. So I just want to say, I love your work too, Christy. I love your work. I love your energy with which you do that work and you bring to people. Thank you so much for supporting me and all the change this book has the potential to create. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, you know, I want to say one last thing. With all the mass consciousness, and a lot of people are feeling and experiencing a lot of fear right now, having a community like you're creating in the Facebook is so essential to be able to, you know, read a book like that, to be able to apply a book like that, but then to be able to hear other people's stories and be able to, you know, just plug in some way in this world that we're in. If you don't feel supported, if you don't have other people that are growing with you, if you don't have people that are willing to learn this information with you, it's so important to surround yourself with other people that are, because it helps you grow too. And it helps you feel like, oh my God, am I insane? You know, I'm not alone in this, right? And so the fact that you're creating a Facebook group where there's discussions and they can see evidence, oh my gosh, I did this and this manifested. I mean, it helps us all just believe in the light so much more and what's possible. So thank you for giving that as a gift. It's a beautiful community you're creating.
Yeah, community is powerful, and immersing yourself in a community is one of the key things you can do to keep yourself on track. So,
absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Dawson. Thanks, everybody. Have an amazing, amazing week.
Bless you. Much love.
Bye.
Thanks for watching, and here is a related video to watch right now. Also, check out my free webinars on creating whatever you want in your life using the universal laws that I explain in each webinar. So share your thoughts by leaving a comment and continue the conversation at ChristyWhitman.com.